plants acquire these elements in the form of nutrients. Nutrients are materials that an organism needs in form that the organism can take them up in. So you know a lot from Biology 211 about photosynthesis, and you know that the basic chemical reaction of photosynthesis, many individual reactions, but the net reaction of photosynthesis is that it allows plants to take carbon dioxide and water, convert them into carbohydrate and oxygen. So carbon dioxide is arguably a nutrient. Not all people would consider it a nutrient. Some people just consider it a respiratory gas. Semantics. Clearly, carbon dioxide is used to build macromolecules, and therefore, in my way of looking at things, is a building block nutrient of plants. Oxygen is a nutrient of plants, maybe less so. It isn't so much incorporated into structures from its oxygen gas form any more than we incorporate oxygen into structures. We use it as our final electron acceptor. What do plants use it for? Why? As their final electron acceptor when they're carrying out the burning of fuel that they themselves have made, of course. But still, remember, plants are aerobic respiration conducting organisms. Now, the nitrogen gas present in the atmosphere and present in vast quantities in the atmosphere, nitrogen is 80%-ish of the air we breathe, is absolutely unavailable to plants. Plants cannot use nitrogen gas as a nutrient as they can carbon dioxide, as they can water, as they can ammonium or nitrate. So ammonium and nitrate are the two common forms of nitrogen-containing nutrient for plants. The calcium, potassium, magnesium, phosphate, and sulfate that plants use as their nutrient forms of these elements that they need to make up macromolecules and make up components of enzymes are found in this form. And you'll notice in each one of these cases, these ions, these are not substances that you can obtain much energy from. So carbon dioxide, plant takes up carbon dioxide, it spends energy to do that. Plant takes up ammonium, takes up nitrate, and then it turns it into amino acids, nucleic acids. These are energy-consuming processes. The plant does not use either one of these as fuel. The plant doesn't use any of these ions as fuel, or phosphate as fuel, or sulfate as fuel, or water as fuel, or carbon dioxide as fuel. So where does a plant get its fuel? A plant, oddly enough, makes its fuel. Plants are solar-powered organisms. They do not consume energy-containing nutrients. They take up essentially energy-empty ion forms of nutrients, use their solar power systems to generate the energy that is used to build plant bodies from these low-energy compounds. The uptake of nutrients from the soil, of course, takes place through roots. I've drawn here a root cross-section with the different cell types labeled, and in a way that distinguishes what is really let inside the plant rather than what is permitted to enter, the digestive, no, there's no digestion here, the absorptive tissue of the plant. When we talk about animal biology, we talk about the contents of the digestive system, what happens in the lumen of the digestive system, as being part of the local environment, of not being part of the organism itself. So too the soil water, which is continuous with the internal space of the root, all the way around the epidermal cells, all the way around the cortical cells. That liquid is not considered to be part of the plant's juices. The plant internal space, besides the cells being plant internal space, of course, is considered to begin at this third level of cells, the endodermis. And the endodermis makes a structure called the Casparian strip to preserve the distinct nature, the distinct differences between this interstitial fluid within the plant and the soil water that is outside of the plant, or in the soil water surrounding the outer two layer sets of plant root cells. Okay, so the epidermis is the outermost layer. The cortex is the second layer in. Sometimes this cortex is many cell layers, but they are, in roots, always on the outside of the endodermis. And the endodermis separates out the inside from the out. The inside of a plant's root is often in a textbook called the stele, S-T-E-L-E. Within it, the next layer of cells is the pericycle. The pericycle cells are waiting for the right signals to make lateral roots. So those are the stem cells ready to take information from signaling from other parts of the plant, and when they believe that it's time or are told that it's time to do so, these will divide up and form new root meristems, which will become lateral root organs. The xylem and phloem are found inside of that, and the xylem and phloem and pericycle are all bathing in interstitial fluid, unlike the cortex and epidermis, which are bathing in root soil water. What about the endodermis? Well, the endodermis is that set of cells that has connection both to the interstitial fluid and to the soil water. Nutrients move to the plant with the soil water, and the soil water is a solution, really, of water and nutrients moving around in very complicated ways, always following water potential, but there's an awful lot of macroscopic force, like rain, gravity, aquifer movement. So water is moving around in really complicated ways as a solution. And then when it's bathing these tissues, and so this blue area is really the cell wall space in which these membranes, which would be the black lines, and then the white and the yellow, that's the cytoplasm of these cells. These cells bathing in this soil water can take up nutrition from the soil water, much as our brush border cells can take up nutrition from the fluid passing through the small intestine. We'll talk about the way they do this in the next slide, but notice that the endodermis is also in contact with that soil water, and the endodermis too can take up nutrients from the soil water. But the pericycle, the xylem and phloem, those internal tissues, those tissues inside the stele, cannot take up nutrition from the soil water. Okay? By the time nutrients pass into the interstitial fluid, or the cells within the interstitial fluid, they're well and righteously inside the plant. All three of these cell types can take up nutrients from the soil water. All three of these cell types are interconnected by a very dense set of plasmodesmata. So although I haven't drawn the connections between all these cells, they're all connected cytoplasm to cytoplasm. I'll offer a textbook version tries to make a 3D representation of these relationships. So here must be some cortical cells, and here are the endodermal cells, and this purple strip material, that's the Casparian strip that separates the soil water from the steel. Okay, here's another less magnified version. Nutrients can be taken up into the epidermis, into the cortex, into the endodermis. And once they do, they're inside. They are now part of this organism. But while they're out in this wall space, they're not. So this red stuff is not part of this plant yet. But this blue stuff is part of the plant yet because it's entered the cytoplasm of cells. You'll notice that once a nutrient is inside any of these cell types, it never has to exit the cell into the interstitial fluid or soil water again because of the plasmodesmatic connections between these cells. So nutrients only enter the plant once.